Today I want to discuss a new perspective on polygamy and its synergistic effect with hypergamy. I recommend watching my previous video on hypergamy if you want to better understand what I'm going to say. To start off, I should clarify I don't exactly mean polygamy in the sense of having multiple spouses. Most people view polygamy to involve marriage, and rightly so by definition. I'm unfortunately unaware of the right word for what I want to discuss, so I picked polygamy since it's the closest. Promiscuity was another word considered, but it carries a connotation of distrust that isn't quite right. Everyone involved seems to be in mutual acceptance of the way things work. As a disclaimer, this video isn't going to discuss the implication of polygamy in isolation. For example, I haven't considered the religious or legal consequences. If you feel strongly about these issues, you may want to look for another video. And once again, I'll be focusing on heterosexual relationships. So what exactly am I talking about? In a mostly bipartite system, the essential problem with hypergamy, if you simultaneously have polygamy, is whichever side has less power will end up with many people who get nothing. This imbalance can lead to many personal and social problems, as we've seen with some violent incel outbursts. At this point, you might be thinking, then it's a good thing modern society is almost entirely monogamous. It's here I think a fairly deep and subtle problem exists. See, most people think polygamy is an issue of numbers, how many partners at once, for example. But to me, in today's society, it's more of an issue of time, how long between partners before you're considered polygamous. If your relationships last years at a time, sure, this feels monogamous. I'd argue months would be the same. It starts to seem iffy at the scale of weeks, but what about hookups every week or every few days? Especially if you start re-engaging with the same people due to social exhaustion, is there any difference between this scenario and the more traditional notion of polygamy? The emotional baggage might even linger long enough between re-engagements to resemble a contiguous relationship. From my perspective, this culture is really no different from polygamy except for one critical point. Individuals in society here are collectively deluded into embracing the romanticism of participating in monogamy while actually behaving polygamously, which is great for businesses, I guess, but has the potential for unfortunate problems, as you can imagine. This romanticism can lead the hypergamous subgroup of individuals to increasingly refuse commitment without allowing the system to return to a monogamous equilibrium, potentially past reasonable time limits of their biology, creating and growing an unsatisfied and frustrated complement. Before moving forward, I'd like to say I don't think polygamy alone produces any devastating problems. If everyone is willing to date or marry across with respect to some notion of value, an imbalance doesn't occur. A counter-argument could be made from research on the nuclear family, but when I internally have that debate, it quickly devolves into bickering about semantics. Similarly, I don't think hypergamy alone is a problem. It's an inevitable expression of evolution that can have long-term useful effects. Without the possibility of time-concerned polygamy, I can desire other people's partners, but it won't matter because once those two have been matched, even just by dating, I have no chance for the foreseeable future since neither would consider short-lasting relationships. The stability of romantic interactions is higher since pair bonding won't be worn down by too many partners. For the edgier red-pilled people, you might say liquidity is lower in the sexual marketplace, so relationships are encouraged to last longer, causing pigeonholing sooner, whether due to impatience or anxiety. It effectively compels people to behave less hypergamously, regardless of their feelings, after which things like the endowment effect will help maintain stability, especially in first or second relationships. I have confidence the philosophers that composed the moral guidelines of the past foresaw this problem if I could do the same while taking a shower. It perhaps explains a part of why the classical notion of romantic interaction is how it is in religious texts. With that said, let's put on our tinfoil hats and make some deductions from what we understand to stretch our imaginations a bit. This section will be full on flat earth levels of extrapolation, so please listen to everything with a mouthful of salt. First, let's reason about why time-concerned polygamy could reduce the stability of relationships at an individual level. If devices that affect partner value verification get eroded over time due to polygamous behavior, we might guess an individual's weekly perception of their partner shifts towards having an equal chance to be above or below their verification threshold. Once you believe this, it's pretty easy to see why stability decreases. You need both parties in a relationship to feel positively towards each other for stability to be maintained, but if both parties' perceptions are a coin flip, there's only a quarter chance this happens. Note, this doesn't necessarily contradict what I said earlier since I'm not confident relationship instability by itself classifies as a devastating societal problem. it's possible people wouldn't care about individual relationship stability as long as new relationships can be formed without much difficulty. And second, let's ask what could happen if things go incredibly bizarre. As I presented in my video updating the model for romantic interaction, there are almost certainly biological asymptotes that prevent hypergamy from reaching verifier-less limiting projections. Here I'm going to remove the verifier and show how absurd of a theory we can produce. And before some group gets upset with me, this is almost certainly the section that will get taken out of context. Suppose polygamy and hypergamy go unchecked for many years. Due to the relatively higher power women currently have in partner selection, they end up all competing over a tiny fraction of men. Both sides still believe in the delusion of monogamous relationships, but harems effectively form, leaving a large group of unselected men and a smaller group of unselected women. From here, let's consider 3 chaotic scenarios. First scenario, noticing that being female provides certain social privileges and feeling the privileges afforded to males are unobtainable due to not reaching some social value threshold, these unselected men decide to transition to female to have better chances at finding fulfillment in life. This process continues till the combination of unselected women and trans women balance the remaining unselected men, and we recurse till society can be partitioned into tiers of harems. After some time, some high-value men become fixated on certain women and preferring greater chances to partner with their first choice over having many candidate partners, they realize it's a competitive advantage regarding reciprocation in a society of harems to be monogamous, inspiring a wave of copycats. As the number of unselected women rise, previously unselected men realize their opportunity and socially enforce monogamy as the status quo, returning society to conservative times. Second scenario. Due to discrepancies in signaling and verification, the unselected individuals can't find each other attractive, so they simply don't reproduce. No reproduction leads to significant population decline, even more severe than what's seen in modern Japan, and we natural selection our way out of certain undesirable traits. After many generations, our ability to signal attractiveness catches up to our ability to verify it, so the unselected individuals of each generation don't mind pursuing each other anymore, and monogamy gets reintroduced bottom up. Of course, evolution doesn't disappear, so decades later we're competing on some other traits and the process starts all over again. Third scenario. Realizing appearance is the main factor in being attractive, the unselected men and women invest heavily in plastic surgery, beyond what's seen in modern Korea. As demand increases each generation, technologies advance and soon gene editing as well as optimized out-of-womb fetal development is normalized. Competition becomes so harsh that we've settled into some local optimum of what it means to be an ideal human being. Our species becomes homogenized in every aspect. First looks, then intelligence, athleticism, the arts, gaming, whatever you can imagine. Society looks almost like a simulation. When everyone's the main character, no one is. Anyways, as you can see, things can get pretty wacky quickly. Honestly, I don't think the problem is that dramatic in modern society. Within the right social circles, it's still probable for most people to enter sensible relationships. However, I think we should acknowledge that dating habits are steering towards effective polygamy through interweaving, and I hope we can give the topic more consideration since it can have rather undesirable consequences when mixed with our inherent nature to be opportunistic. Thanks for listening, and see you in the next one.